Thailand. Definitely not my land, and I was stupid enough to believe it could have been when I first decided to make the move there. I fell hard for the country. I thought it was a country of wonder, a country of intrigue, and a country where dreams could become reality, but I was wrong. My story takes a few unexpected turns along the way. I'm not saying that what I did should be repeated, respected, or looked up to. What I am saying is, if you find yourself in a position like I found myself in, just about to lose everything that I'd ever worked for to my Thai wife that I once loved, there are ways and means to make sure that you're not the one who ends up on the wrong side of things. Things didn't have to turn out the way they did, though, not even in the slightest. If the love and respect that I gave was taken on board and given back to me in equal amounts, our marriage could have run its course. It's an unfortunate turn of events, really, that what I thought was an equal partnership, with equal amounts of respect, and I have to keep using that word, was nothing more than a facade, where I wasn't the husband in this relationship. I was the job. It took me quite a long time to actually understand that this was the case. I never thought people could be like that. I never thought people could be so calculated, and the thing that shocks me the most is that I also never thought that people could have such self-belief that they should have things that they didn't work for. The self-centered nature of people, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to use the same word that many people have used to describe similar situations in Thailand: the greed. I never considered that such greed could exist before. I want to share my whole story. There's no point just talking about what happened without saying why I got into this position in the first place, because I wouldn't have been in that position if my life had followed the path that it was meant to follow. But again, somebody else got in the way of that, and that was my first wife. I got married quite young. I was 23, and she was also 23. She was, and I would say still is, the love of my life. It was everything a marriage should have been, at least I thought it was. We got married, we both worked for a few years before we bought our first house. A few years go by and we have our first child. And the months and years all blended together, and I thought we were happy. We made good money together. We travelled together. We gave our children great experiences that set them up well for their future lives. And we were both building a strong retirement, where we both planned to retire together at the age of 50. 50 was the age when our youngest child would have left university. We had 2 children in quick succession, and this is what we talked about for as long as I could remember. We seemed to have these shared dreams of travelling the globe. We'd worked hard, saved a lot of money. We had investments that were paying, and it did seem when we both turned 47 that we were only a few years away from the point in life when we could finally take a step back and enjoy ourselves once and for all. Not that we didn't enjoy ourselves before. Work hard, play hard. But it was always work hard and play a little bit, because you're too tired to really play because of the amount of work you're doing. I'm not complaining. I felt fortunate that I was able to work and make the money that I did. Not fortunes, but a comfortable existence. So it came as quite a bit of a surprise when all of a sudden my wife said that she was in a relationship with this other guy for 2 years behind my back. She wanted a divorce, and she was going to be with him instead. Our youngest child had just left for university, and perhaps that's why she waited until that point. But she used to travel for work quite a lot, as I did. In fact, I never considered doing anything like that, though. She met the guy, and whatever it was that he could give her that I couldn't meant she wanted to break our unbreakable bond. I get it that she was within her rights to do that. But I don't technically agree, though, that she can cheat on me, change her mind, and in turn warrant half of everything. There should be some penalty for no-fault divorce, regardless of which party initiates it. But what ended up was everything got split down the middle. She actually got a little bit more than I did, but it was only a marginal amount more. And what seemed like a real retirement only a few years away turned into something altogether very different. It was our plan to retire with the equivalent of approximately $1.5 million. The income that should provide us with the ability to do within reason what we wanted. But after the divorce and the legal fees that went along with that, I had approximately $650,000, which was not really enough to live that way I planned when I turned 50. One of the problems, though, with this divorce was that it just didn't ruin me financially. It ruined me emotionally as well as mentally. I had never cheated on her, even once, and the thought of cheating on her repulsed me. I always put my family first above myself, which is what you should do, and I would do that again every single time, but she didn't. She put herself first, and while the relationship with that guy sizzled away, and now she's one of those old and bitter women who still places the same amount of value on herself as she did when she was in her 20s, not understanding that she's far older than she was, and her actions speak louder than her own opinions of herself. I'm older as well, we both are, but we would have got older together. But it didn't happen like that, so the emotional and mental turmoil meant that I quickly started to struggle at work, falling into a depression so bad that I had to go to the doctor to get medication. And it wasn't until I turned 49 when I pulled myself out of that and started getting back into work. I think because I'd always given myself the target of 50 to retire, knowing that that's what now wasn't possible, that's why I sunk so low. But eventually, I did pull myself out of it, got back to work, and by the time I turned 55 in 2013, I had enough money to finally retire. And because I'd been and visited Thailand a few times since I turned 50, I had decided that I was going to move to Thailand to retire, because it felt like I could have the same sort of retirement that I'd planned to have before with the money that I had. Whereas at home my retirement wouldn't have been anything of the sort. I had approximately $800,000, most of which was invested, giving me a reasonable return, and a little bit I planned to have as an emergency fund for as and when I wanted to use it. It wasn't exactly what I planned, but it was making the best of a bad situation, and when I finally moved to Thailand, I was still very naive to the realities of making such a move. I was still very Western-centric in my mindset, and I used that Western mindset in order to make decisions, in order to move forward with my life, and in order to build my life, not knowing that things in Thailand work very differently to how they work where I was from, in so many different ways. And it takes quite a long time before you actually understand what Thailand is all about. And what it is all about is nothing like we in the West know as being normal. I'm not saying it's wrong or not normal for them, because it is. But for us, it's a different type of normal, where, and I'm going to have to use that word yet again, but where greed and a misplaced understanding of the world as a whole, where Thailand is the centre of the universe. It takes you a long time to understand these deep-seated opinions and beliefs that are held by many people in Thailand, because anybody else looking at them without understanding them to be true would be a bit confused. Why could they be so hypocritical? But I guess that is just par for the course. Thailand was a country of wonder when I went for my first visit. I fell in love with the country more than I'd ever fallen in love with any other country that I'd ever travelled to over the years with my ex-wife and children. We considered ourselves to be very well travelled, but Thailand was a different place altogether. Naturally, I was drawn to Pattaya as a single guy because it seemed to represent what I was looking for in my life. Just a place where I could belong and be myself without being judged and criticised. And I visited Thailand a total of 3 times, each time reaffirming my love of the country, each time solidifying the idea that I could retire to Thailand as soon as I could. And again, it's one thing to go to Thailand on holiday and have a good time, but to live there and to deal with the bureaucracy, the racism, and I have to use the overused word again, the greed. I don't think I have to use that, but I feel like I have to. I'm in 2 minds. But to deal with all that when you're living there, it does take its toll on you mentally, when you're taught in the West that we have to respect people who come from different places. We have to allow them to be. But after I lived there for a long time, I quickly understood that Thailand was doing everything the right way for Thailand and Thai people, even at the expense of Thai people who are in families to people who aren't from Thailand. But that's again par for the course. What I'm wanting to mention is that when I visited Thailand each of those 3 times, it felt like it was there for the taking. Western-centric, Western-focused, yet distinctly Thai. A perfect combination which I didn't realise could be thwarted by the insatiable hunt for more money, money and more money. I got to these understandings and opinions long before I had actual concerns about the ability to continue my retirement. The idea that I was so close to losing everything. I was prepared to accept them for what they were, and I got on with it. It was just like I had those rose-tinted glasses removed from my eyes for the first time. And I was living in Thailand, happy in Thailand, liking Thailand, and accepting it for what it was. And it's not that I would have left if things didn't go the way they did. I still loved Thailand, but it didn't give me what I thought Thailand would give me. Because it's as if when you go to Thailand for the first time, you're sold a dream. You're sold a dream by the best salesperson that the world has ever seen. Yet when you start to understand what's actually going on there and what it's like, that dream does turn more into a nightmare. Yet the nightmare of Thailand when you're happy in a relationship is still better than the nightmare of going somewhere else, at least at the time. So while I garnered lots of opinions about Thailand in a short space of time living there, I wasn't about to leave if things didn't go as bad as they did, until I stepped in and made sure that my retirement wouldn't fall to the hands of my new wife. I met my wife in 2013, after I'd been living in Thailand for about 3 months. I was 55, she was 22, and she was working at a bar in Pattaya on Soi Bukkao. At the time, I stupidly believed that this was real love, because I fell for her, and while it wasn't the same kind of love I felt for my first wife all those years ago, it was still real love, and I felt that way from the moment that I met her. I found out that she had 2 children as well, and she was from a village in Isan, as is often the case. At this point, I'd met probably over 100 different girls that worked in the bars. Never had any feelings for any of them, but it was 99 of them that seemed to have the same kind of backstory. It got a bit boring after a while hearing the same thing again and again, but I suppose that you can't have exactly what you want. Until I met her, and she was exactly what I wanted, because she didn't necessarily look like all the other girls there. She was a lot paler in complexion, she didn't have any tattoos, she didn't have any piercings, and she wasn't loud or boisterous or in your face. She just seemed to be calm, collected, and just looking for a better life, as opposed to working in a bar. I thought I knew enough by this moment in time that there were some very big differences between girls that worked in the bars. Some of them were there to make as much money as they could, to fleece as many guys as they could, to have as many sponsors as they could. Yet some of them seemed to be there simply because they wanted someone to look after them and have a family with. I thought at the time that this was 9 bad ones to 1 good one. However, that I would later learn was extremely inaccurate. I think it's more accurate to say that 99 bad ones to 1 good one, and that 1 good one still won't be perfect. But I thought at the time that I'd found that 1 in 10, and because of the situation with her working in a bar and all the connotations that went along with that, I wanted to take her out of the bar as quickly as possible, before the bar was so ingrained in her that she would become numb to any form of connection with me. She'd been working there for 1 year, described her old husband as not being very good, and just leaving her with the children never to be seen again, and her being there to support her children and also her family. That's one thing that I didn't really like about Thailand very early on, the way that children are meant to look after their parents. The thought of my children having to look after me makes me feel sick. I would rather remove myself from the equation altogether than be a financial burden on my own children. It's meant to be the other way around. The parents are the ones who are meant to help the children, and under no circumstances is it meant to be the other way around. So I didn't understand that about Thailand. I mean, I did understand it, but I didn't like it. It was just a small compromise that I knew I would need to make, though. Still, in 2013, she moved into the place I was renting in Pattaya. I stopped going out as often. She's incredible. She's everything that I was looking for, and I thought that she loved me more than anything in the world. I think we probably lived together in that condo in Pattaya for around 3 months, but I was getting a bit bored in Pattaya. It's a bit too much. It's constant stimulation, yet I felt like I was getting all the stimulation I needed in this relationship. I was thinking about asking her to marry me, but I didn't know when yet. We took a trip together to Bangkok. I'd spent a bit of time in Bangkok during the times that I'd visited previously, but I'd never spent a considerable amount of time in the city. I did, though, think that living somewhere like that would be beneficial for her as well, because she was younger than me. I was even thinking about paying for her to go and finish high school and go to university, and maybe she could better herself and get a respectable career. I thought being in the capital would be the best place for both of us in this sense. When I asked her how she would feel about living in Bangkok, the way she responded was just like any guy would have wanted to hear. If you're happy in Bangkok, I will be happy in Bangkok. That was basically what she said. So we did decide on that trip to Bangkok. We go back to Pattaya, get our things, and find a place to live in Bangkok instead. I can remember the date exactly when we moved to Bangkok. It was the 1st of November 2013, and we rented a great unit with views over the Chao Phraya River. It wasn't cheap, but it was a part of the city that I loved. I wanted to be away from the craziness of Sukhumvit because I thought that would be better for both of us. We took the place for 6 months, and at this point I'd already agreed to give my wife a little bit of money so that she could use that to help her children and family. I understood that the family situation was like that in Thailand, and this was a compromise I was prepared to make. 15,000 baht, just under $500 a month, was hers, and hers to do with as she pleased. And life was everything I thought life would be in retirement. My income was good, considering my investments, but it wasn't enough for us to get around the world in business class or anything like that. But it was enough for us to eat out every day, take occasional trips to other parts of the country, and over the next 6 months until about May 2014, I fell more and more in love with her, and I felt that she was falling more and more in love with me as well, and that's when we got married. I did it all, everything that I am embarrassed to admit that I did in terms of the marriage, but I didn't, and I just wanted to respect her and her family and culture. I didn't want her to do anything other than be happy in the situation. I did ask her how she would feel about returning to finish high school. She actually dropped out of high school before she finished, and then potentially going on to university to better herself. She said she would be interested in that, but she really had a desire to start doing a business. That's what she wanted to do, and I asked her what she wanted to do. What is it that you could do if you could do anything? She said she really wanted to buy old condo units, renovate them, and sell them. I did think that was a little bit out of her scope of ability, but I wasn't about to completely throw out her ideas without thinking more about them and seeing if she knew what she was talking about. After a lot of talking with her, I think she got this idea from one of her friends who had married a guy who bought and sold condos in Bangkok, and she thought that this sounded like it would be an easy thing to do, which of course it wouldn't. But at that moment, I just wanted her to be happy. I just wanted her to be proud of herself. I wanted her to be able to look up to me as the provider of her ability to do things. And I seriously started thinking about looking for a very cheap unit, and I mean really cheap, and letting her have a go with it, seeing how it went. I had my loose cash, probably $90,000 at the time, I guess, already used 10,000 of it, and I had the 700,000 which was invested, and that was giving me an income of approximately $40,000 a year to live on. That was more than enough to live on in Thailand at the time. Rent a nice place, go out to eat every day, go on short trips away every few months. More than enough to be able to do that. So I didn't see any problem in dipping into my loose cash because we'd be buying an asset anyway. And even if she couldn't sell it, she could rent it out. And even if she couldn't rent it out, Still, it would be sat there, and it would eventually sell or rent. We started looking around. We're not in the main tourist areas here. We're not in the heart of the city. We're looking in really old, cheap buildings. And there was one building that stood out where you could buy a rundown unit for as little as 200,000 baht. I'm talking rundown. I'm talking about extremely bad quality. Yet people lived in them because that's all they could afford to rent. We went to look at a few of these, and I was starting to think I'd be happy for her to try. Every time we looked at one, she just turned up her nose and said, "No, this is no good. We need something better." And no matter what I said to her, such as, "You try with this, if it goes well, you can keep going a little bit bigger each time," the more and more I tried to say that to her, well, the more that she didn't really interest in that. That was one of the things she never seemed to get her head around. It was as if she didn't even want to run before she could walk. She wanted to fly before she could crawl, I think is the best thing to say, looking back. But when I saw her disappointed, that made me feel bad, and reluctantly I agreed to start looking at something that was a bit more expensive. And we found somewhere in On Nut that was just over $1 million. It was a reasonable building, needed a lot of work, and I agreed to invest the money for her to try this. I knew it was a risk, but I also knew it wouldn't affect my income, and also it could be something that would make her a little bit of money, which in turn meant I wouldn't need to give her any money. That could be good as well. Even if I put the chance of something good coming out of this close to 1 in 1,000,000, it was still a chance, and I was prepared to go for it. So in 2014, she was the proud owner of a rundown condo, and she quickly got to work contacting people and getting people to come and do the renovation work, and a few months later the transformation was incredible. I'd helped a lot and made sure that she did things right, but she had spent 300,000 on it, and she thought she could sell it for 1.5 based on the fact that other units in the building were listed for that price. And by the end of 2014 it had sold, only for 1.35 million, and after all the transfer fees, she made about 20,000. That was probably the worst thing to ever happen to me because now this had emboldened her somehow, and she thought that she had all the answers to being able to make even more money, and now she wanted us to invest in more things together. She wanted to go big and do more. The problem is, she's my dream wife at this moment. She's doing everything that I want her to do. She's always happy, she's always performing, she's always sweet, she's never nagging or angry, or the way she shouldn't be. And I completely overlooked the fact that I was already getting a reasonable income in terms of my investments. Completely overlooked that in its entirety, because after she quickly bought and sold another one at the start of 2015 and made about 40,000 on it, I just thought, well, if I keep a small amount of money in my investments to cover my absolute basics, insurance, rent, and things like that, then this is actually a really fun business that we're doing here. And because of that, I think I'm happy to take 500,000 out of my investments. And let's start doing bigger units, perhaps buy our own place to live. And she somehow managed to work that out of me. Everything that we were buying, everything we were doing was going into her name. We bought an incredible unit just after she sold the second one. That was after I brought more money into the country. An absolutely incredible place in Phrom Phong. It was expensive, it needed a lot doing to it, and it took a year to sell. But that made 600,000 baht profit, and again, my income before then was so much more. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about her to me. This was about having my dream wife at my every beck and call, and her being able to add value to herself and to make herself feel good about herself. And also it was good that she was able to do this because she could be proud in front of her family. And while I still had $200,000 invested, and that was giving me enough to cover the very basics, which I would never go below, we could have been having more if we did nothing. But again, we were doing nothing anyway, in terms of living, going out to eat and travelling a bit. But now we're involved in a really exciting business with projects, so it was a lifestyle change as well as more than anything else. And I guess no matter what I say, I'm still never going to justify my stupidity for even considering doing this in the first place. But I'm trying my best to justify it by saying that at the time, we're both having a very good time. What happened next though, bear in mind she'd made that 600,000. She kept all that for herself, by the way, bought an old car, gave some to her parents and children, and she was very proud of herself. And I suppose I was proud of her as well, even though she was only able to do this with my money. We had that $500,000 which was there. I'd actually spent a bit of money on some other personal things for myself, which I don't really want to talk about because that's too private. But about $500,000 in Thailand. I think it was 17 million baht, something along those lines. And because things were going well, she'd been talking time and time again about buying our own house in Bangkok, buy our own place on the outskirts of the city, and with the rest of the money we can use that for investing. And when we sold that place in Phrom Phong at the end of 2016, we spent 8 million baht on an amazing house in a housing development just outside Thonburi. And it was the type of place that even on my good salary that I was earning back at home, together with my ex-wife earning her good salary, we could still never have a house as amazing as that. And I suppose the house prices in Thailand for things like that have gone up considerably since then. But my wife was so happy with it, and I was so happy with it. And it was in her name, and I had no protection if anything went wrong. After we purchased that house at the end of 2016, around about the same time we found another investment unit that my wife wanted to do. This was going to cost a lot, probably need $1 million that needed to go into it, and that would give us a buffer for a few years of living expenses in the bank, if things took a while to happen. At that moment, I was heavily invested in my wife's name, to the tune of nearly everything that I'd worked my whole life for, and I didn't take a step back to think that that was the most stupid thing anybody would ever have done. I just did it without thinking about it, and I didn't even have any worse nightmares because it didn't even come to my mind that something could go badly wrong. I thought I knew who my wife was, I thought she knew who I was, and I thought that we were a team. But I didn't expect around this time was to find out some very, very uncomfortable truths about the relationship that I was in with her, and who she was as a person, and other activities that she was engaged in during our relationship. I guess these were happening throughout the whole of our relationship, but it was around the start of 2017 when I found out a few things which made me take a step back and think everything I've ever worked for is now on the line. The first thing that I noticed was when we were visiting her family at the start of 2017. She'd always told me that her old husband, who was the father of her 2 children, had gone off and left her, and he was not living in the village anymore and had never been back and was nowhere to be seen. But when we were there, at that moment, there was a very different story told. This guy, who I'd seen in the village many times before when we visited, probably 10 times in total, I'd seen him every single time, and it turns out that he was her old husband. Why that is interesting is because I distinctly remember a few times ago her being very close with him. Not touchy-feely, but very close quarters, speaking together in a way like it made me think what's going on there. But I didn't think it was anything because it was just a guy. Perhaps she was talking about anything. But the fact that I found out that that was her old husband, that did make me think a bit. I always, when we were visiting the family for a few days, I paid for an air conditioning in an outside shack to make it bearable, but I'd stay there most of the time and she would go out, see her family, do other things. And it was when I found out that that was her old husband that I started to do a bit more digging, instead of just spending most of the time in the room. I wanted to go out and see things for myself. I think that she forgot she told me that he was no longer in the picture, and was completely gone from the village, never to be seen again. I think she forgot that, because she just said it so out in the open, and I'm the sort of person who picks up on even tiny details, and I obsess over tiny details. Up until this point in our relationship together and our marriage, there hadn't been anything for me to concern myself over. But that thing, it just didn't sit right with me. The problem now was that her talking to him, what was it about? Discussing the children? Bearing in mind that he's not giving any money for the children, so therefore there shouldn't be anything to discuss. Or was there something more to it? I think it was my extreme paranoia that made me want to dig deeper into this situation, and I knew a guy in the village who spoke great English. He'd been working in Bangkok, a Thai guy, done very well for himself, had a very nice house, nice car parked outside, and he was the prime example of a Thai person from a village who, through hard work, effort, and being clever, built a great life for himself. There are people like that in Thailand, but I didn't see many. I'd spoken to him on a number of occasions because he liked to speak English and he was a really friendly guy, and I felt like I was going to go and speak to him to see if he knew the score with my wife and her ex. I know most of the time you're not going to get anything out of people, but this guy was different. He was level-headed, and when we were there that time, I went to have a word with him and asked him if he knew what was going on. Initially, he didn't really want to say anything, but he said it was common knowledge in the village that they're still sort of together. Not properly together, but he just said, "I thought you knew." I wasn't expecting that. He said most people would never tell you this because they want to stay out of it, but just don't say I said anything, and he even said this happens all the time with relationships like this. You're older than she is, and she's probably not going to do anything bad to you, but if she sees her ex, who happens to be her ex a few times, perhaps it's just in your best interest to just ignore it. But how was I about to ignore something like that? All this happened because she forgot what she told me about her so-called ex. And now when we're returning to Bangkok in the car that she bought with the profit she made from the money I gave her to invest, all I can do is act normally because I want to make sure that I don't let on that I know everything, because if I did, this could jeopardize absolutely everything that I'd ever worked for. I think the thing was, I never told her how much money I had. I never said this is the most of everything I've got, and I started to think that perhaps that guy was saying that they were just carrying on with each other, just seeing each other, just talking with each other and being friendly with each other. Perhaps he wasn't meaning that they were actually like a couple still. Perhaps it was just spreading gossip, that no one really knew what was going on. But then I'm thinking about everything, and I just decided to sit on things for a few days, let them stew a bit, and start to think about the best course of action. What would the best course of action be? I was getting concerned. We got back to Bangkok, to this great house that she was very happy with, and over the next month, the place that we purchased to renovate was complete, and it was time to put it up for sale. I still hadn't come up with an idea as what I was going to do yet to get to the bottom of things. But that's when I came up with the idea to try to hire someone who could follow my wife to see what she was doing. We didn't spend all our time together. She'd be out doing work on the condos and I'd be out doing my own things, and we'd see each other in the evenings. I never thought that she'd be doing anything other than that. But now after that month I was starting to not know anything, and I wanted to. I found someone who worked like that and was able to trail my wife. It felt very deceitful doing that because I didn't know the whole picture yet. But over the course of a month, around early 2017, he followed her around when she was going to the condo, but it quickly became clear that during the daytime she was going to see him as well. He was starting living in a small place not too far away from our house, and it appeared she was the one paying for it, which in turn meant that I was paying for it. So my worst fears had just been realised. She'd been in this relationship probably all along, and she slipped up. She slipped up when she lied to me about what he was doing, because it just didn't sit right with me anymore, and I now knew the truth. There were also cases of her going to a few of the bars around Sukhumvit Soi 4, not to work, but she was talking to girls there. Apparently people knew each other, and she was working Pattaya before, and she knew people who were working here. This sweet, innocent Thai girl who I thought was one of the good ones wasn't, was she? She was still going back to those places, and she was still carrying on with her so-called ex, and now, what was she planning to do? She could take everything, and I'd be royally screwed. So I had to come up with a plan. I really needed to come up with a plan. When I found out the truth, I didn't confront my wife with it. I didn't get angry, and I was starting to think that by being extra nice, by saying that I have more money coming soon, I want to get another 2 investment condos because you're doing such a good job and I'm proud of you, and that's probably going to come in 6 months' time. I also said that I can't believe how good you are with money. I can't believe that you're so good at doing these things. Bearing in mind she'd only done a few and she was quite lucky to make a tiny bit of money. And she didn't have to borrow money or pay interest like many people did. She just had the money from me. But I wanted her to feel proud of herself and also feel like I was falling more and more for her tricks and betrayal. At this moment, I had about 2 million cash in Thailand, 2 million baht. That was in my bank account, and she didn't really have any other money apart from the money she made, but she'd spent it. I said what I wanted to do. I think it would be better if we opened a joint account. We can both sign on it. I can sign, you can sign, and we can both take out money as and when we need it. But we can't eat into it because this is for the next project. I wanted her to have comfort and control over the money as well as me, while still having a guard that she couldn't actually use it. The thing was, and the reason for doing this, I thought, was once the condo sold, however long that took, the money could be deposited there. That was my thinking. So I'm risking this 2 million in a way because I know deep down she's not going to do anything bad if she thinks there's more money coming, 20 million baht on the way in 6 months' time. So she was very happy with that arrangement. We opened the bank account and the money was deposited. She's not behaving strangely around me. She's acting exactly the same way as when I met her, which I suppose is even scarier than anything else, because she's living a double life. She's doing all these things that she should be doing, yet with me, she's exactly the same. Loving, sweet, kind, great performer, never angry, never anything bad. And I'm starting to think she's formulating her own plan. Once the rest of this money comes, and thank God I never told her that the money I invested was all I had, because if I did, she'd have probably finished it there and then. But she's thinking that she's going to be the best person she can be until this money comes, and then who knows what her intentions were. About 3 months go by and we haven't sold that place yet. In fact, it's looking like this one's going to be her first loss, and I'm not caring about that. Saying everybody gets something wrong occasionally, don't worry about it. You can do another one soon. Then don't forget it's going to be another 2 or 3 that you can do after that when the money comes, and I can't wait. I'm having the time of my life. Telling her that this is the best point of my life. I'm not overly exaggerating things, but I'm playing to her own beliefs that she's some kind of prodigal genius who has somehow found a way to get her hands on multiple millions of baht and become a successful businesswoman. She believes that this is true. She believes that she is this person, and I'm playing to her beliefs as much as I can to make sure that she doesn't decide to leave there and then and leave me with nothing. The problem was, though, even if the condo sold, we still had a lot of money in the house. And then I started thinking about how we could get her to sell the house without thinking that she would be losing the house. And I slowly started introducing an idea of building from scratch one of those Thai-style apartment buildings that you see all over cities. They could be from 12 to 200 rooms in these places, and each room is individually let to somebody who works the more menial, less-paying jobs. And we could get, depending on the style we were talking about, anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 per month per room. And also, we can charge a little extra for the electric rates on top. And I'm slowly introducing this idea, saying that if we had one with about 150 rooms, 5,000 a month per room, that's about 750,000 baht per month. And we're going to have enough money to buy a new house in a year if we do that. So I kept introducing this and always pointing them out. Oh, I'd love to have one of those one day. Look at that one there. I wonder how much they make. I kept bringing this up every time we drove past one. Every time she's talking about the next project, I'm saying, well, imagine this. Imagine you have this for a year and you've got a house. Another year, you've got your first investment property, and another, and another. That was stage 1 of my plan. I hadn't yet talked about the fact that we would need to sell the house to make this a reality, and that was going to be a very delicate point because she loved that house, and she was very proud of that house. So it would need to be very convincing. It would need to be her idea, really, to sell it. Then I thought of something else entirely, and deep down I knew it was very, very cruel. I knew it was harsh, but I knew I would feel a lot better about it because of the fact I knew she was coming to me in the evenings, and there was a big chance that during the day she'd been with him. So what about getting her to take out a big loan on that house? Given the fact that she's got money in the bank, given the fact she can show she's been making money, there's money going in all the time, she's got lots, maybe we can get her to mortgage it, telling her we can pay it off in a year, and then that could make her life more difficult. She deserved it. It was cruel, but that was the idea that I was warming to. Again, the question now was, how do I put this idea to her? I needed the money from the condo back that was in her name. I needed the money from the house that was in her name. And I needed the 2 million baht that was in that joint account. And I needed it to be her idea. It was around this point, I think halfway through 2017, when we actually had an offer on the condo. The people who were buying would need to get finance, which meant they went through the application progress, and it was going to be about 100,000 baht loss on this one. But I was just telling my wife that this was a very small loss and she should be proud of herself, because think of everything else we can do. Then said that I'd love to take her away to her choice of islands for a week to celebrate the sale. And I said I have a really exciting thing to talk about. I actually have a little bit more money coming, maybe about 22 million baht, and I have an idea that could make everything even better for both of us. She excitedly agreed and we went to Phuket, actually. Not where I wanted to go, but fair enough, and it was there that I said to her, I've been doing a lot of research into these apartment buildings. I've been around to quite a few of them, seen examples of them, and for approximately 40 million baht, we can get a place that will give us an income of 750,000 a month. I mean, you have to remember that she wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. She'd been able to call people to tell them to put a bathroom in a condo or something like that, but she thought she was. She didn't question that an investment like that, for that return being a bit unfeasible, and we were talking nearly 20% there. But I showed her lots of pictures that I'd taken. I'd been busy. I'd been really busy. Apartment buildings, plans that I'd found online, prices to have them built that I'd found, and even a mock-up building that I'd seen at a Bangkok builder's, saying that I think this would be the best thing for both of us if we put all the money into this. And then, of course, it would have to be in your name because I can't own it. But imagine if we can bring in 750,000 a month. With that, we might not be able to do a condo for a year or two, but if we saved most of this, we'll be able to do that, and we'd have the building together. I think this could be great for our future. I'm not being too pushy, I'm just saying that I think it's a great idea, wanting her to say it's her idea and warm to it. I want her to want to do it. I'm just spelling things out in a way like I always spelled things out, to make her believe that she can't do anything bad to me now because she's going to lose out on too much. I then took out a calculator. I was there with a calculator, reams of paper in front of me, sitting on this wooden table with a fence right next to us, not a fence like a wooden railing in front of us, the beach and sea to one side. She's got a coconut that she's drinking out of, and I've got a San Miguel light. And I've got a calculator there, going through the sums, saying we're going to need approximately 40 million baht. We sold that condo, I've got 22 million coming, we've got the 2 million in the bank, and I have some other money, but I can't access that for 2 years because it's in a high investment rate. I've got another 20 million there or something, but I can't get at that. So we're about 8 million short, which isn't great. I then tried to do some other calculations and she's talking back to me. We're just talking normally, like a normal couple would. I'm trying to do the best I can here, and I start doing other calculations saying, well, if we did one that was 30 million instead, that could work. That could be a really good idea. But then, now it's only going to make 300 a month. It won't be worth it then. It would take too long to get the condo. Then Mrs. Business Genius comes out with herself. Maybe we can borrow money on the house and we can pay it back quickly. No, we can't do that, I said. It's going to cost too much in interest. How much, she said. I don't know. Maybe if we did it for a year, it could be like 100,000 baht. So little, she said. Oh, I don't know, I said. Let's just talk about it when we're back in Bangkok. I'll go and show you the exact idea that I have. Also going to need to find the land, and I found some that's 10 million. Of course, I was banking on the fact that she'd believe we could buy land in a part of Bangkok like that for 10 million, big enough for that, which we most definitely couldn't. But she just said, yes, let's talk about it then. I don't have any problems with borrowing money on the house because if it's for our future. Then she said, when is this 22 million coming? I told her about 4 months' time, something along those lines, and then I just put everything away and got along with the day like nothing had happened. Back in Bangkok, the people who wanted to buy the condo were approved for the finance. Then it was a matter of time before we got the money for that. So in the meantime, I went to the places that I'd been to before, just hoping she would take my word for things without doing much research herself. And of course she did, because she was just, keen on the idea of making a lot of money. And when we actually went to look at one of these places for sale, which just so happened to be about 40 million baht, Again, I was just hoping she wouldn't question the fact that there were far fewer rooms than the ones I said we could have, but she didn't even question it. I was thinking way too much about things that I didn't need to think about, and I think she really liked the idea of having a place like this where she could make so much money. And when we were driving back, she said, "Let's go ahead, borrow money on the house. If we can get 8 million, when the other money comes, then we can do that. We can still live there. We can pay the house back in a year." And I'm thinking, what she's thinking inside is that once this money's come, I'm off. She must be thinking that because once we got back from Phuket, I had my guy follow her again and she was seeing her so-called ex all the time. Probably talking about this windfall amount of money that was going to come in too soon, and eventually things would be great for them. Asking him to hold on a little bit while longer. I bet they were laughing together how they were going to get all this stupid Farang's money, and she was spelling out to him exactly what was going to happen, how it would belong to her and there'd be nothing for me to do about it. I guess she hadn't reckoned on the fact that she was dealing with someone who wasn't just another idiot who thought something in the meantime meant more than his life savings. A month goes by, condo sale goes through, 100,000 baht loss. The money gets deposited in our joint account, and at this point, I'd be able to take any money out of the joint bank account as and when I wanted to. She could take money out of the bank account. So there was a chance she could do a runner with the 10 million, which was there. I deliberately set up the bank that way to give her that possibility, using the calculated risk that she wouldn't do that, thinking that there's a lot more on the way. There was 10 million there. About 8 million I was still out of pocket. And I told her the money was due in about 2 months, so maybe it's better we start on this finance now. There was still a chance she wouldn't be approved for it, and then I'd have to think of another solution as to what to do. But there had been large amounts of money going into her account. She'd bought the car, she had proof of income from condos she had, and there was a huge money trail into her account. And we were hoping that she could borrow the full 8 million, based on the valuation of the house at 10 million. They were very dodgy in Thailand at the banks, getting around minimums or maximums and things like that. Very dodgy. There were some cases I heard where if you were buying a house that was 4 million baht, the bank would try to give you a loan for 5 million, just to give you an extra million on top. It's just what they seemed to happen there, and there was a good chance she was going to be approved. We went through the whole process. We've got 10 million sat in that account, which both of us can withdraw at any time. She doesn't know that I know anything, so she's thinking about getting more soon, and through the grace of God, she was approved for finance on the house. But get this, it was for 9 million baht, not 8. That was when things started to feel real for me. This money was deposited in her bank, and now it was a case of her putting it into the joint account. That had to be her idea again, but we hadn't talked about that before. Was it just that she'd do it automatically, or would I have to try and get the money into that account? And it was now just coming up with an idea as to why the money would need to go in the joint account if she didn't do it herself. When she got that finance, I was just acting cool. "Oh, that's great. Can't wait to do this business. I can't wait for us to have one of those buildings. I can't wait. You're going to make a great manager. You're going to be amazing at it, and I hope I can be helpful as well because I'm getting older now. But it's going to be good. It's going to be really good." I told her I think the money's going to be here in about 2 weeks' time, so we're going to need all the money in one place. And then we can go and find a piece of land we wanted to build on. I was hoping again that she wouldn't say, "Can we go and look at the land now and buy it?" But she didn't. I think she was too focused on this 22 supposed million baht that she didn't even say anything about anything else. She just kept asking, "Is it coming yet? Is it coming yet? Is it here yet?" And I kept saying a few weeks' time and then a week's time. I can't believe, though, I kept telling her we're going to have a 40 million baht in our bank. That's a lot of money. And then, as if by magic, without me having to ask, she put that money that we got for the loan in the joint account. And now all my money was there. It was a question of how do I get it and get out of Thailand with all my money. In Thailand, at least at the time, I'm not sure if it's changed because I'm hearing all the time about different banking rules and things like that in Thailand, but you could just go and take out as much cash as you wanted, no questions asked. So I was thinking about doing that, but that would be a duffel bag full of cash, which I didn't like the sound of. Transferring it out of the country was a bit of a risk because of the time it takes to do that. Even if I changed it into a different currency and tried to take it in cash, thinking that they had the €500 notes, the thought of carrying 10 bundles of €500 notes, while it would be a smaller amount and wouldn't take up that much room, it did fill me with dread. What if I was stopped? I needed to be quick and swift, but I wasn't really knowing what to do at this point. Money was there, and this other money is meant to be coming in a week's time, and my wife is, if I'm being perfectly honest, the best version of herself that I had ever seen. But at the same time, she's carrying on with that guy during the daytime, and it's been going on ever since we were together. And that one mistake that she made by telling me that he wasn't around anymore, only to discover that he was always around, and me coming to the conclusions of what I came to the conclusions of, speaking to that guy who I was fortunate enough to give me enough worry to get someone to follow her to see what she was doing. I know I was really stupid for what I did. All my decisions were stupid, just like everybody else's would have been. But I was also extremely paranoid, and I played on my own wife's self-belief that she was a business genius. But how am I going to get 18 million baht out of the country? I thought I'd cracked it when I thought about exchanging it all to Bitcoin. Getting Bitcoin in a cold storage wallet, that'd work. But the exchange at the time in Thailand had a limit of 2 million baht per day, so that wouldn't work. There appeared to be nothing I could do apart from risk it with cash, and I decided to go to some of the exchange places, the super rich ones that they have in Bangkok, to see if they had ready supplies of €500 notes, because after my research, it seemed that in 2016 they decided that they were going to cease these, but they weren't going to be phased out yet. But it was starting to be clear that that would be the best thing for me to do. Just risk it. A bundle of 100 notes would be €50,000, and we were talking about nearly €500,000 here. 10 bundles. I could keep that in a bag, if I had to, cross the border into Cambodia, take it from there. Many people might have thought about transferring the money out of the country, but I was concerned that she would get wind of that and stop the transaction because it had to go for approval, and while I could show that the money had been transferred in by me, maybe I was transferring out of a joint account, it wouldn't work. I could transfer it to my personal account and then transfer it from there, but I was just concerned that there was a 1-day window or 2-day window where something could go wrong. I wanted it to be finalised, which is why the transfer option didn't sound good to me. I decided cash was the only option. And when I told her the money was due very, very soon, she just so happened to want to go and visit her family, probably with that guy to celebrate. I went to the bank, went to the branch where we opened the account at, and they knew me there because I'd been lots of times, as had she. They knew that the money came from me, and I'd just like to withdraw 18 million baht in cash. Sorry, we don't have that much here, you can have 5. Probably get the rest tomorrow. You think I can go to another branch to get more? Probably. Okay, I'll take 5 then. 2 minutes later, I've got 5 million baht in a backpack, walking as fast as I can to the next branch. I had the foresight to set up SMS alerts on the account to my number and my number alone, but she could still access the account, she could still look online, but I just hoped she wouldn't. Over the next 2 hours, I had all the money, went to as many different super rich exchanges as I could, didn't want to exchange all of it at once for obvious reasons, and by the end of that business day I had all the money in euros, and I was hightailing it in a taxi to the Cambodian border. The first time I met my wife, the first time I saw her and spent time with her, I gave her 1,000 baht. That was how much I left in the account. Maybe that's my sick sense of humour. I made it into Cambodia without any concern or issues. I felt like I was 3/4 of the way there. I'd rescued my money from my own stupid decisions and from the fact that my wife was cheating on me through the whole time we were together and lying to me the whole time, and probably had grand plans for that money herself. But I left her with what she was worth and what she was worth alone. 1,000 baht. The banking in Cambodia was amazing, really. No questions asked. Deposited money, money transferred back to my account where it originated from, before I started down the path of doing some ridiculous things with the girl I loved so much that I didn't even really know what I was doing. And at this point, I bet she was very concerned about things, very upset about things. But it was a joint account. The money had come from me, and the thing I loved the most was the huge loan she had against the house that she didn't really need or deserve. Okay, she had the car that she bought, but that was it. I left Cambodia after I'd been there for a few days, went back home originally for a few weeks, and I moved on to a completely different country, and I never heard from my wife ever again. I saved my money by being cunning and using what she wanted against her. She wanted all my money, she wanted everything, and she was prepared to carry on with her so-called ex behind my back while using my money, and that was not acceptable. I am stupid for being so infatuated with her, for being so in love with her, that I had taken leave of my senses when I started investing nearly all my money into her name, thinking that we were a team, thinking that we were one and the same, like we were partners. But we weren't, were we? She wanted what I had, I wanted her. I was the job, and she was on that job waiting for the payout of a lifetime. But I will say it one more time. I left her exactly what she was worth. 1,000 baht. Check, effing, mate.